guys, welcome back to Chronicles of a Therapist. We back with another episode. I have my old co-worker and friend, Dr. Hale, here. Dr. Hale, introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, all of your titles and degrees and all of that fun stuff.
Oh, wow. I'm Dr. Deonte Hale, Special Agent FBI, mental health therapist. I also have my own podcast called, The Doctor Has No Filter, What's Right versus What's Life. And I'm just happy to be here today. Talk about the issues that affect the community. Talk about the issues that you all want to talk about that affects us everybody. So let's get it in.
Let's get it in. So I brought my fellow coworker because on his podcast, he talks about life, right? So I wanted to just talk about your ideas of what you think male toxicity is in the construct of our community as a Black man, as somebody who also sees people in a mental health capacity. How does that affect you? How do you think it affects our community? And so we go there.
Well, when you talk about male toxicity, it sounds like you talk about the things that are negative in the male community, how the males affect the community, especially the African American community. So when you talk about toxicity, it's different levels to it. You're talking about men that don't raise their children. We're talking about men that don't know how to treat their women. We're talking about men that know how to treat their mother. So, toxicity goes a long way. It depends on, what level we want to talk about. So, me, I just recently did a podcast episode on that, and I explained to the brothers, or I tried to explain to the brothers, the reasons that our Black women are bitter at them. Mm-hmm. And one of the main things was, the raising of children. 8 out of 10 African American children are born out of wedlock. And out of those 8 out of those 10, only 3 out of those 10's fathers are actively in their lives. That's a very low percentage. So it starts there. Without a male presence, without a male presence, it's toxic. You have these young brothers and sisters that need their fathers around, they're not around. Now, a lot of times in the community, we hear about, these boys need their fathers, these boys need their fathers. It's almost equally as important, if not more important, for a female to have their father.
Absolutely.
Because that's when she first learns how a man is supposed to treat her, what he can and can't get away with, and also how to carry herself around men.
Right.
So this toxicity thing, it goes a long way.
Yeah, when I was listening to your episode, where you were talking about bitterness and how, there's the idea that people always talk about men being toxic, but it's a rollover effect. So it comes from, okay, like you said, the men not being in the home, not loving women, not having trauma, not being able to manage their trauma and their experiences, how they were raised, what was going on. So I like how you brought it all together. And part of all of our conversations that we always have, there's that mental health undertone of understanding why people struggle with depression, anxiety, and trauma. But also, you grew up in neighborhood. As Black people, if you grow up in that environment, guess what? You're going to be predisposed to have anxiety, to not be able to communicate effectively and not be able to have positive relationships. And so I think when I think about male toxicity, it can be swayed because as a female, as a professional Black female, I hear it a lot, but there's no discussion about how do we as women affect our men and how do we talk badly about our men and how, you ain't this and you ain't that and you a dog, but if you've never experienced what a healthy relationship with a man is, and I know one thing that I appreciate for any Black man who is a staple in their family, with their moms, with their sisters, with their kids, and I know that you absolutely are a big part of not just the people you serve, but your family is important. And so I think having men speak about that, because a lot of men don't talk about the other side of being a Black man and being a father and having, you're a veteran and you've been through a lot of stuff. But guess what? I still can sit here as a professional and whatever hat I need to put in and however. And so that's one thing that's why I wanted you to come on my show, because I know your work ethic as a professional, but I know that at the same time, you're who you are.
Right.
Just because you're a professional doesn't change.
No, what I think that where we have to start at is that when you talk about how our sisters view us, I think the big mistake is, or the big misconception, I won't say mistake, the misconception is you understand what it is to be a Black man. See, it's very easy to say someone is toxic if you've never been in their shoes and experienced it. So a lot of these sisters need to understand what the black man goes through on a daily basis. You have to watch out for your own brothers in the neighborhood that want to cut your throat. You got to watch out for the man at work that want to cut your throat. You got to watch out for your own people that want to cut your throat.
Right.
Nobody respects you.
Right.
Nobody respects you. So I think that a lot of our sisters don't understand that. And I think that another thing that needs to be pointed out when we talk about toxic men, a lot of our sisters didn't have their fathers.
Right.
So where do they get their views on where a man is toxic at? Tyler Perry, I love him to death, but you know what? I enjoyed the criticism he got about his movies when they said that every time he depicts, a black man, it's always something negative. A lot of our sisters feed off that because if you didn't have your father, you look at social media, you listen to music, you look at movies, you watch Tyler Perry movies and other type of movies and say, you know what, that's how most of these sorry suckers are. Yep. It's not true.
Right.
A lot of the stats show that a lot of black men are in their kids' lives. A lot of stats show that the education of black men is on the rise, percentage-wise, with getting degrees and starting their own businesses and things of that nature. But no one talks about that.
Right.
Because they want us to hate ourselves. They want us to think that we're toxic. And the problem is a lot of our black women are starting to feed into that stereotype and that misconception. And it's just easy for them to do. I have a statement that I always say. I always tell our black women, every problem you have is not because of a man. And for the brothers, every problem you have is not because of the man. You talked about being predisposed to the environment. There's a quote that's out, I'm sure you all have heard. It says, be the change you want to see. Mm-hmm. We've all heard that, right? Mm-hmm. But just me, myself, I grew up in the Huff and Glenville areas. I did it all. I gang banged. I sold dope. I did all that. I wasn't always with the law. I wasn't always, a therapist. So, but the thing is, you don't have to be what you see. Mm-hmm. See, that's the difference. That's that toxic thought process.
Right.
You don't have to be what you see. We can't use the neighborhood as a staple, as an excuse not to conduct ourselves in an honorable manner. Right. So I think that, I call it mental genocide. Mental genocide is when you're stuck with a toxic mindset. Right. So use that toxic mindset to make everybody around you and within you toxic. Mm-hmm. So that's where we have to start. This is you talked about mental health. It's all up here first.
Yep.
Thinking, you have a thought first and then you have behavior.
Right.
So that's what we're stuck at.
How did you come out of the things that you experienced? Like, what was the thing? Because I think a lot of men struggle with the switch, or like, this is the mentality that I'm in, mm-hmm. and I can't see outside of that box. So for you personally, how did you break that box and do something different from what you saw, what you were doing? Like, what was your thing? What was your experience that made you say, I need to do something different?
I have to be honest. I have to say, this goes right with your episode. I have to say my father. My father was, man, God rest his soul, the late, great Charles Tripp. He was on me. He wouldn't let up. He wouldn't let up and he wouldn't give up. You have a lot of men out here that act a little soft nowadays. They'll give up on their kids. You can't get, no matter how bad, finger quote, you say they are, no matter how delinquent or defiant they may be, those are your children. You brought them in this world. You got to stick with them. Whatever you got to do to get them over that fence, you hit them over the head and drag them over the fence. You got to do what you got to do. And he hit me in the head a couple of times. We're going to talk about that. But, it's crazy. People ask me this, and this might sound a little corny, but so, I one day, all this stuff happened in the span of 2 days. One day, real big gang fight, getting the real big gang fight on 105. The next day, get chased by the police because we out there selling crack on the corner. And the next day, I went on a field trip. Maybe the last week of my junior year in high school at Glenville. And I can't even remember what this field trip was, but I know we were downtown and I saw a whole bunch of homeless people. I think they called it Tent City. They all down there in tents. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that was. It scared the hell out of me. And I said, you know what? I don't want that to be me. And I'm like, I'm out here doing these things. Because even when I was gang banging and selling dope, I knew it was wrong. I really didn't want to do it. I was being a follower. Even though people were following me, I was being a follower too.
Right.
I was following what everybody else was doing.
Right.
Because I didn't really want to sell drugs. I didn't really want to be in the game. But, it was fun at the time. And I thought it was the right thing to do because that's what I saw.
Right.
But then, that light bulb came on and said, you know what? You don't have to be what you see. And that day, what I saw was a bunch of homeless people that didn't have anything.
Right.
So I was like, you don't have to be what you see. And that the light bulb just clicked on for me. And I said, you know what? I think soon as school started, that senior year, I saw that Air Force recruit. I ran over to him like Carl Lewis, like a track star. Said, get me out of here. I got to go. I don't care where you send me. Just send me somewhere. But I went to the Air Force. I didn't want to fight no wars. I knew what I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
So they said, you got to score high on the test. I said, wait a minute. I said, well, I ain't dumb. Come on with your test. So I looked at it like, oh, Lord. But, God is good. You got to do what you got to do. So you have to change your mindset. You have to want to not be what you see. You have to be the change you want to see. You have to want to change. I don't care what anybody says. I had an old childhood friend of mine maybe 2 years ago, because I still try to show love. I never forget where I come from. I might not hang on Huff. I might not hang on the town 105. But if I see you, I'm gonna treat you the same. I'm still who I am. I'm gonna show you love.
Right.
But we got to talking, and he's like, man, I'm proud of you. And I said to him, I said, man, you can do those things too. And his response threw me off. His response said, he said, you know what, D? He said, man, we didn't have the same opportunities as you. And I said, what are you talking about? We grew up in the same rat-infested neighborhood. We was on the corner. We was breaking the houses together. So how you didn't have the same opportunities? No, I just saw another door and walked through it. You decided to stay in the house in that same environment.
Right.
So again, toxic mindset. He really believes his distorted mind. That's mental health.
It is
distorted thinking, right?
Yep.
Lack of cognitive processing.
Yeah.
Lack of cognitive processing led him to believe that he and I did not have the same opportunities. We both grew up in the same neighborhood
and was doing the same thing,
the same dirt together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's toxic starts with the mindset. It's not. I think most of our community just focus on the behavior, but toxic starts with the mindset.
Absolutely.
Once your mindset is toxic, your behavior shall follow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. I think that it was so much stuff in your episode, and I don't want you to recap your episode, but I think that was it. Like, I think when I think about toxicity, even as wanting to date and wanting to be with people, it's the mindset. It's how people think about their relationships. I know you said something about, dang, I just listened to it. But you were talking about how in relationships, things happen and there's no communication. And then people are blaming this person did this and this person.
Right.
But there's no ownership of, hey, this is what I should have done differently.
Right. It's easy to blame the other party. I mean, that's what we do in the black community as black men and black women. One thing that sickens me, you log on social media every day, you see constant bashing of sexes between black men and black women. You go and look on some of your other friends who have not our color pages, they don't do that.
They don't.
It's just black men and black women. NIGGA ain't nothing. BITCH, they ain't nothing. I'm like, first we're degrading each other with these terms, with this terminology, and then we find reasons to blame each other for everything. It's instead of just both accepting our role and how we can make things together. Now, one thing I always say to the brothers, they get upset with, when they try to bring up biblical terms, well, yes, God says the man is the head, right? So guess what? Every time something goes wrong, it's always the man's fault. You know why it's always the man's fault? You can't be the leader, and then when stuff go bad, say, well, if she did something, you the leader, right?
Right.
So you're supposed to fix it. And so if she was toxic, you supposed to get rid of her. You the king. When something is toxic in the kingdom, you get rid of it. So you can't say, oh, man, she this, she that. You kept her there. Right. It's your fault. You the lead, right? You the lead. She got to get out of here.
Right.
So that's the problem. So it's always the man's fault. The man is the lead. So if you got a queen or so-called queen, and she not carrying herself, conducting herself appropriately, she's got to go.
Right.
So, but if you stick with her and she's still there and she toxic, that's the king's fault. He didn't remove her.
Right.
So you can't be the lead and then say it wasn't your fault. Just like at your job, all of us here got a job. You in charge. When you got to talk to the big boss, they're gonna say, "Well, you in charge. That's your department. It's your fault." Well, I didn't know. Well, you get paid to know.
Yep.
As a king, you get paid to know what's going on in your castle. So it's always the man's fault. You call yourself the king, you call yourself the lead, it's your fault. It's your fault to fix things or eliminate them. That's how it goes. That's how it's supposed to go.
So what is something that you would tell a young black man trying to be a king? What would be something that you would tell him to do so that he can change his mindset and do something different?
Well, first thing I would tell him is, it's an old cliche, but it's like you have to be a leader, but you have to learn how to follow a leader first. See, people always tell you have to learn to follow before you can lead, but you ever notice they don't tell you who to follow?
Yeah.
They always say you gotta follow before you can lead. But tell me who to follow. So you have to, follow this leader, follow this person first.
Right.
That's what I always tell people. Me myself being a 32nd degree Mason, that's what I tell people that's coming up. See that guy over there? Follow him. He's a good Mason. Mm-hmm. He's gonna take you somewhere because I follow him. He's gonna take you. So follow him. Mm-hmm. So you have to tell people who to follow. In addition, I think that you have to tell a young and up and coming king the value of education. I think young black men don't understand the value of education. One post I hate, y'all ever seen this post where somebody will post a list of trades and they kind of introduce the kids like, you don't got to go to college, do this. That's a bad message. Mm-hmm. That's not something, because guess what? If my kid says, I want to do this trade that makes $12 an hour, and they say, and that's what they want to do, I say, okay. But I don't think anybody in this room says you raise your kid. You say, you know what? When you grow up, I want you to make $12 an hour. Nobody talks to their kids like that. Mm-mm. So what you're doing is you're lowering the standard and telling them not to get education before they've even tried it.
Right. A
trade is something you're supposed to come with and say, here's something you can fall back on once you try college and it didn't work out.
Right.
Don't automatically say, here, don't go to college, take this $15 an hour trade. That's just a way for black people to accept mediocrity. So you teach a king, don't accept mediocrity. You're supposed to shoot for the stars first. That's an old cliche, but it's the truth. And you got to let them know that, being a king and having your queen be submissive. Submissive doesn't mean dominance and power and control. Submissive means that you can make the right decisions, because when you're the king, you have to make decisions that make the whole community positive. The whole community is happy.
Right.
So your kids are happy. Your wife is happy. Your mom is happy. Your grandkids are happy. It's not just what I say is goes and that's it, because sometimes what you say might not go the right way.
That's true.
Because of the decision making that you're engaging in.
That's true.
So being a king and having somebody be submissive means you can make intelligent, informed decisions where your queen can say, you know what, he got this, he's running it. Because contrary to popular belief, black women want a man that can come in and take charge. The problem with us brothers these days is we come in and say we're going to do all this, this, and that. And once she see you can't do it, she going to fall back and say, I can't follow him.
Yep.
Then she starts to become disrespectful. And then you can't figure it out. You're like, she disrespectful, I can't take it. But you don't hold yourself accountable and say, well, you know what? I gave her this holy scroll, a list of everything I was going to do from 1 to 50, and I'm only on number 3. And it's 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So, all those things got to be considered. And just let him know how his decision-making only doesn't impact himself, but it affects others too.
Right.
I think we don't think about that. Every decision you make impacts somebody else. Your kids, somebody. Especially all of us that have kids. Every decision you make impacts your kids. That young brother and young sister watching you, daddy, is emulating everything you say and do.
Yeah.
Everything you say and do, you got to watch what you say. So that's a lot for a young king, to digest, but heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
So
I think when I think about trades and stuff like that, I see a lot of people default to trades, like you said, because they haven't tried, but sometimes they have no idea that they can, in our community, we think that people are either going to be athletes, doctors, or teachers, or engineers, or a nurse. So there's so much, or rappers, an entertainer. And with this day and age, everybody want to be content famous, but that's another story. But I think that there's so much to do as far as education. And even if you have a trade, you can be educated in your trade.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
if you like doing construction, be the best business person.
Absolutely.
So you can understand, this is my construction business and I know how to get contracts. And I think there's not conversations, especially with black people, that you can have a trade. You could be a welder, but guess what? You still have to learn whatever your trade is. You have to have some kind of education to back it, because any of us who've ever been an entrepreneur or had a business, if you're just blindly doing it, you got to know some stuff. It's got to be something some cushion.
Right. You have to learn your business no matter what it is. It reminds me, even without a trade, you remember when they came out with the New Edition movie, right? Everybody knows New Edition. They know all the members. But one of your least talented members was the richest one, which was Michael Bivins. Because what did he do different? Michael Bivins says, you know what? I know I can't sing. Y'all just my boys. I'm part of the group. I'm going to learn the business.
Yep.
He had more money than Bobby, all them combined, because he learned the business and learned what it takes to make the money.
Right.
So your point is valid. You have to learn, whatever industry you're in, you have to learn how to get to the very top of your industry. Don't just be satisfied because you're at a certain point. See, black people we settle.
Yep.
We're settlers and we accept mediocrity. Because if I'm in the industry and I make $200,000 a year, right? But the top of that industry makes $5 million, you're selling for mediocrity. Yeah, $200,000 is a lot of money, but if I know I can get the $5 million, that's what I want. But am I willing to put in the time and the energy and the effort
to do it? Yeah,
that's what it's all about. And we have to, that's why I hate the one slogan they say about our people. If you want to hide something, put it where?
In a book.
That makes me vomit. That makes me drink a whole fifth. When I hear that, I don't need that to drink the whole fifth.
I was about to say.
But I'm saying it's motivation. On that note, But yeah, that's a horrible statement. I think that, because I did a podcast on that episode too about, it says, I think the title was "Leaving the Ghetto Behind," and I just talked about the dynamics of why our people feel like if I leave the neighborhood, I'm a sellout. First of all, it's not even about leaving the neighborhood. It's about just being an adult and I can do what I want to do.
Right.
If I got the money and I want to move to Malibu, why can't I?
Right.
Why I got to stay here? Like, now me, I get my hair cut in the neighborhood. I spend money. I eat in the neighborhoods. I don't want to eat in the suburbs. We know the real food in the neighborhood.
That's true.
It's
very true.
But knowing what I know and knowing who I was, I don't want to live there. I'm just being real. If I had to, I would. But I'm just being real about it. So that don't make you a sellout. That just means you got growth and development. Growth and development. Now they're trying to do certain things in certain neighborhoods, make them, look pretty again. But, hopefully that lasts. But we have to value You know, what's in our community? We have to value, and the community is really the people.
Yeah.
The people make the community,
Right.
not these restaurants, not these churches. 105, man, it's a church on every corner. I'm like, look
It
at this.
is.
I'm like, we used to sell more heroin than anybody in the country, all in front of all them churches. I'm like, obviously they're not helping, or we just don't know. But you know, I mean, it's the people that make the community.
That's true.
And I think that when people say, "Well, I got to get out," I say, "No, it's just the people." So, you know, I think, but it's a lot of things with toxicity, man. You know, it's a mindset, it's a behavior, it's an assumption, it's influences. You know, I think that people don't realize that the media, which is music, television, you know, radio, theater, they teach the black man and the black woman to hate each other.
Yep.
Which is why you only see us on social media going back and forth. And it irritates my soul that no matter how many times I explain this to people, they just continue to do it and look past it. You go on even other minorities. You don't see Hispanics doing that. You don't see Asians doing that. Even other minorities don't do that. We're the main minority that does that. So think about it. It has to be a mindset. It's a self-hatred. It's a self-hatred that we don't even realize. And we're pitted against each other. Instead of sitting down and being wise and communicating and figuring this out, we just continue to do it.
Yeah.
So it's a toxic mindset and it's a toxic pattern. That's mental and emotional genocide.
Absolutely. Well, there it is. Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome.
So this Chronicles of a Therapist, you can find his podcast at...
You can go Spotify, Apple, Simplecast. It's pretty much everywhere. iHeart, whatever radio outlet you listen to, check me out. Every Sunday, 12 noon. The Doctor Has No Filter. What's right versus what's life.
And that's all we got. Thank you for listening, Chronicles of a Therapist. And we'll catch you next episode. Thank you, Dr. Hale.
You're welcome. No problem.